Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to a new episode of our Letter to Voxes podcast. Today, we are undertaking a deep dive into an author whose life story is, well, it's just as profound as his philosophy. A man who, despite being born as literal property, became one of history's most practical and powerful guides to personal resilience.
We are diving deep into the world and the wisdom of the Greek Stoic philosopher Epictetus.
And specifically, his concise yet monumentally influential manual, the Enchiridion, which we mostly know simply as the Handbook.
It's an absolutely essential text for anyone looking for genuine self-mastery. And what makes this deep dive so compelling, is that we are looking at something that is so far from a dry, theoretical, philosophical treatise.
Right, this isn't just abstract ideas.
Not at all. The Enchiridion, which actually means manual or that which is held in the hand, is a compilation. It was transcribed and edited by his devoted pupil, Arrian.
And the sources are pretty clear on this point, aren't they? This wasn't meant as an introduction for beginners.
No, not at all. It was designed as a dense, action-oriented summary of both theoretical and applied Stoicism. It was really a guide for the advanced student, someone who is seeking to transform their life completely.
That context is just so vital. This is not Philosophy 101. It's more like the advanced course for someone who's already committed to this strenuous philosophical path.
Exactly.
So today, our mission is to unpack the core principles of this incredible compilation, to really understand the techniques Epictetus taught, and to grasp exactly why this ancient text is credited with shaping so much of modern Western thought on self-control and human freedom.
And we absolutely have to begin with man himself. I mean, the wisdom in the Enchiridion is completely inseparable from the brutal realities of his upbringing. Epictetus was born around AD 50 in Hierapolis, Phrygia, which is in modern-day Turkey, and he was born into slavery. And the profound, just heartbreaking irony, it starts with his name.
It's a fact that should really stop us in our tracks for a moment.
Yeah, it really should. The name by which history knows him, Epictetus. That's Epictetus. It's not the name his parents gave him. We don't even know that name.
Right.
It's derived from the Greek, and it literally means gained or acquired.
Acquired, like a piece of furniture.
Precisely. The man who would teach the world how to achieve absolute, unassailable internal sovereignty began his life literally named property.
That is the definitive paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
The ultimate teacher of freedom, named for the state of being owned. He spent his formative years in Rome as a slave to a man named Epictetus. Tell us about him. This wasn't just a simple household slave arrangement.
No, not at all. Epictetus was a wealthy freedman. So he himself had been a slave, but had achieved not just freedom, but immense power. He served as the secretary to Emperor Nero.
The Emperor Nero.
The Emperor Nero himself. So he held an administrative position with direct access to the highest levels of Roman power.
So Epictetus's position was incredibly complex.
Absolutely. He had the abject low status of a slave, yet he was situated right at the epicenter of imperial influence and, well, all the intrigue that came with it.
What a unique vantage point to observe the absolute worst of human vanity, ambition, and political volatility, all from the position of someone who is considered less than human.
And yet, even in that environment, he found a path to intellectual growth.
How did that happen?
Well, he developed a passion for philosophy very early on, and it's really a testament to Epaphroditus' wealth, or maybe Epictetus' own unique character, that he was actually permitted to study. He studied Stoic philosophy under one of the most esteemed figures of the era, a man named Musonius Rufus.
So this exposure, even while he was still in bondage, was this incredible privilege that must have profoundly shaped his mind.
Without a doubt.
The sources also mention a lasting physical disability, and the accounts of how he acquired it are, well, they're chilling. They link directly back to the power dynamics of his time.
Yes, there are sources that suggest his leg was deliberately broken by his master.
Deliberate?
The physician Celsus records this really grim anecdote. Now, there are some conflicting accounts. Some suggest the disability might have been congenital, but the enduring story of the master's brutal cruelty, it just reinforces the sheer physical and psychological violence he must have endured.
And it permanently anchors his later teachings, doesn't it? Especially on the dichotomy of control, that the body's external, it's subject to chance or cruelty, but the will remains untouchable.
Exactly. It's the core of his lived experience.
He eventually obtained his freedom sometime after Nero's death, around AD 68, and he began teaching in Rome. But as so often happens when philosophers start talking a little too loudly about freedom and virtue,
the political authorities take notice, yes. The first century AD was politically tumultuous, to say the least. Around AD 93, the Emperor Domitian, who grew suspicious of any kind of intellectual dissent, decided to banish all philosophers from Rome.
And Epictetus was among them.
He was among those exiled. So this enforced relocation, this moment of external arbitrary persecution, it actually became a profound turning point in his life.
Because instead of quitting, he just immediately relocated to Nicopolis in Epirus, Greece, and founded his own school.
And this school flourished. It really did. It quickly grew in estimation, and it started attracting advanced students from all corners of the Roman world, including Athens and Rome itself.
His reputation even reached the imperial household, didn't it?
It did. The sources confirm that Emperor Hadrian was reportedly friendly with Epictetus, possibly having met him or heard him lecture. Now, there's a famous dialogue, the Altercatio Hadriania Epicteti, which details a conversation between the two.
But that's a fictional composition, right? From later on.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
But the fact that such a fictional account was deemed plausible, that it was popular, that speaks volumes about the enduring respect that Epictetus commanded.
It's truly remarkable. A man who started his life as a voiceless piece of property ends up being considered worthy of advising the emperor of Rome. What about his personal life? His conduct outside of teaching?
He lived exactly as his philosophy prescribed, a life of deep simplicity, very few possessions. He lived alone for a long time, but late in life, he took on the responsibility of a child who was going to be left to die.
He adopted him.
He did. He adopted him and raised him with the help of a woman. So his life was just this consistent, tangible demonstration of his principles. He died sometime around AD 135.
So we have the man, born into chains, scarred by physical abuse, exiled by imperial decree, yet he spent his entire life teaching people how to cultivate an unassailable inner fortress. Total sovereignty over the one thing no external power, not even an emperor, can touch.
It is the ultimate testament to the Stoic project. And this deep connection between his life and his teaching brings us to the nature of the doctrine itself. Because Epictetus, famously, wrote nothing down.
Nothing at all. His philosophy was a living, interactive discipline. We owe every single word we have to Arrian, his pupil.
Arrian, who transcribed his lectures starting around AD 108. And Arrian truly believed he was preserving something comparable to the original Socratic dialogues. He saw Epictetus as a kind of Stoic Socrates.
Someone who didn't just lecture on virtue, but actually embodied it.
Yes. And it's essential for you to understand the difference between the two main works Arrian produced, the Discourses and the Enchiridion.
The discourses are the longer ones, right?
Yeah.
More discursive and interactive.
Exactly. The Discourses present philosophy in process. They show the teacher in action, applying the moral method to concrete, shifting situations, students preparing for a dinner party, dealing with grief, confronting a professional failure. They capture the dynamism of it all.
But the Enchiridion is the distillation.
That's a perfect way to put it. If the Discourses are the 4-year degree program, the Enchiridion is the ultimate cheat sheet.
Huh, I like that.
It's the concise summary of the fundamental ideas and, critically, an introduction to the techniques you need to transform theoretical Stoicism into a way of life.
And this is where that famous Roman Stoic formula, ver militer, life is being a soldier, comes into play.
Yeah.
Let's explore that military metaphor, because it's why the Enchiridion is often called a handbook for the combat officer.
The sources use this hierarchy to define proficiency. The study of philosophy, the one still grappling with the concepts, is the private. The advancing Stoic, who's internalized the principles but hasn't perfected action, that's the non-commissioned officer.
And the true philosopher, the Epictetus figure, is the combat officer.
He's the combat officer. And apprentice students are even described as messengers or scouts of God.
So what does that mean in practical terms? Why a combat officer?
Well, think about it. A combat officer facing immediate danger in complex, rapidly changing moral situations, they can't afford to pause and analyze every action from first principles.
There's no time for that.
No time. They must have absorbed the principles so thoroughly that application is instant. It's a philosophy of moral deployment.
And this relentless focus on practical application leads us directly to Epictetus's core teaching. Philosophy isn't a theoretical discipline, but a way of life, completely dedicated to solving human problems. And he formalized this, didn't he? He divided the whole discipline into 3 distinct parts.
Yes, and this is maybe one of his most important structural contributions. It highlights the chronic error most people make when they study, well, anything, really. The 3 parts are arranged in order of necessity.
Okay, so what's number 1?
The first and most necessary is the application of principles. This is action. For example, the principle that people should not lie. This is the practical moral behavior, the part we should really rest upon.
Just doing the thing.
Doing the thing. The second part is the reasons. Why should people not lie? This provides the justification for the first part and is necessary on account of the first. It's the moral theory behind the action.
Okay, application, then reason. What's third?
The third part is logic and establishment. This is where you examine and establish the reasons defining truth, distinguishing a consequence, understanding what a contradiction is. This logical, technical part is necessary, but only on account of the second part.
Which in turn is only necessary for the first. So we have application supported by reason, which is then supported by logic. But Epictetus noticed a critical flaw in human nature, even back then.
He lamented it. He said his students, and really most people, spend all their time focused on the third part, the logical, argumentative, intellectual gymnastics.
They get stuck in the weeds of theory.
Completely. They become masters of logical definitions and theoretical reasons, but they completely neglect the first and most necessary part. Practical application. They can demonstrate eloquently why lying is wrong, but they still habitually lie.
Like someone who studies nutrition endlessly but still eats poorly. The knowledge is stored, but the behavior is completely unchanged.
Precisely. And the Enchiridion, therefore, is a blunt instrument. It's designed to force you, the reader, back to part one. It's almost entirely absorbed by moral philosophy, which Epictetus thought was far superior to physics or epistemology.
And epistemology, the study of knowledge, was, in his view, just a tool.
Merely instrumental. It served only one purpose: moral improvement. If the knowledge doesn't lead to better behavior, it's just useless ornamentation.
So now that we've outlined philosophy's true mission and the necessary path of the combat officer, let's take a quick moment and then we'll jump into the foundational concept of the dichotomy of control, which is really the master key to the entire system.
Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoy this podcast.
We're back, ready to dissect the foundation of Epictetus's entire worldview. If the Enchiridion is a manual, Precept D is the operating instruction for the human mind. The dichotomy of control.
This is the great divide. Epictetus argues that genuine subjective consciousness and all inner freedom rest entirely on a single, clear distinction, telling the difference between things within our power and things beyond our power.
And he says that misidentifying even one item on these two lists is the source of all human misery.
All of it. So let's start with the category that matters most: the things within our power.
Okay.
These things are intrinsically free, unrestricted, and unhindered. This includes our opinion, our aim, our desire, and our aversion. Epictetus summarizes this with the Greek term prohairesis.
Prohairesis. That's a key Stoic term we can't just gloss over. It's often translated simply as will,
Yeah.
but it's much more specific than that, isn't it?
It is, yes. It's the moral faculty of judgment. It's not just your choice between coffee or tea. It's the faculty that judges impressions and forms the ultimate decision about what is good or bad, appropriate or inappropriate.
It's like the ruling center of our mind.
It is. And since only we can form our opinions and decide our moral aims, this core faculty is logically, functionally, and eternally untouchable by any external forces. That is our sovereignty.
So I can be chained up in a dungeon, but my judgment about being in a dungeon remains my own.
Absolutely. Now, everything else falls into the second category. Beyond our power. These things are weak, dependent, restricted, and alien to us. The list is long. Our body, our property, our reputation, any office or position we hold, and basically all external events.
You know, I wonder if a lot of listeners, especially today, would argue that reputation is within their power. I mean, we spend so much time curating our public image.
And that is precisely the error Epictetus identifies. You control the opinion you form of yourself, sure, but your reputation is the opinion others form of you. It is external, it's volatile, it's dependent on their judgment, and it can be stripped away by a rumor, a political shift, or a dishonest rival. It is alien.
So Epictetus hammers this point home.
He does. He says if you attribute freedom to dependent things, if you claim what belongs to others, like a stable body or a good reputation, as your own, you will be hindered, you will lament, you will be disturbed, and you will find fault with both gods and men. This is the mechanism of all our suffering.
Because you've tied your internal state, your peace, to this fragile external leash that someone else is holding.
Exactly. But the promise is radical. He says if you take for your own only what is truly your own, you're pro-heresis, and you view external things as they really are, then no one can compel you, no one can restrict you, and no one can hurt your essential self. This results in genuine happiness and freedom.
And this foundational distinction immediately forces us to address precept the second, which is all about controlling desire and aversion. If we crave externals, we lose our freedom.
Right. Desire demands attainment. Aversion demands avoidance. Epictetus is crystal clear. Direct your desire toward things not in your power, and you are guaranteeing yourself disappointment. If you try to shun things like sickness or death or poverty, you risk permanent wretchedness because these things are inevitable externals.
So it's all about regulating your internal cravings and fears.
He advises applying aversion only to undesirable actions within our power. Things like forming bad judgments, acting rashly, or being vicious. And for the time being, especially while you're learning this, he suggests you should restrain desire altogether.
Why is that?
Because if you desire nothing, you can never be disappointed.
That sets the stage for precept the third, which is arguably one of the most psychologically bracing techniques in all of Stoicism, preparation for loss. When you are enjoying a beloved object, a favorite cup, or even a child or a spouse, you're supposed to remind yourself of their true nature.
This is the practice of memento mori, remembering mortality. The cup is fragile. The child is a mortal human being. If the cup breaks, you remember its nature. If your loved one dies, you remember their mortality. This conscious preparation allows you to bear the loss when it inevitably happens.
I have to challenge that a little, though. Doesn't this sound like suppressing genuine human grief? Is Epictetus really asking us to be cold and emotionless?
That's a crucial and very common misunderstanding of Stoicism. He is not asking us to suppress the initial emotional impression, that natural shock or sadness that follows a loss. That initial reaction is involuntary.
Okay, so what is he asking us to suppress?
He's asking us to suppress the judgment that this loss is an absolute evil or some kind of cosmic injustice. He's offering a rational defense mechanism. Grief will come, but the self-destructive, lasting anguish that leads to lamentation and disturbance, that's what he's targeting.
So the rational mind, having already anticipated the impermanence of all these external things, can accept the reality without being completely destroyed by it.
Exactly. It's the difference between feeling sad that the cup broke and feeling rage at the universe for breaking my cup.
Right. And the power to control that judgment is detailed in Precept V, the power of our views.
This is that famous quote, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things." Death is not terrible. The terror resides entirely in our notion of death, our judgment that it is terrible.
So the external event is neutral. The moment I attach a negative or disturbing label to it, that is the source of my distress.
Yes. And if you are hindered or disturbed or grieved, you must never blame the event or the people involved. You must reproach yourself, meaning your own view of the situation.
He breaks down the progression of wisdom, doesn't he?
He does. The uninstructed person blames others. The person entering instruction blames himself. But the perfectly instructed person blames neither. They just understand that external events simply are.
And linking back to his biography, Socrates, who faced death by state decree, didn't view it as terrible. He accepted his circumstance because his proheresis, his will, remained intact, regardless of the hemlock.
It connects his philosophy seamlessly to his own life, which means true elation, according to Precept the Sixth, must therefore also come from within. Don't be proud of external things like wealth or a handsome horse. True satisfaction comes from utilizing the phenomena of existence in harmony with nature, which is your own moral good. That is the only thing truly yours to take pride in.
And to reinforce this sense of detachment, Epictetus gives us the famous ship analogy in Precept the Seventh.
Right. Life is framed as a temporary stop-ashore excursion or a stay at an inn. You are granted certain items for use during the stop. Little fish, a wife, a child, property. But you must keep your thoughts constantly bent toward the ship, ready for the captain's call.
And the moment the captain calls, you must run to the ship, leave everything behind without regret, or risk being carried aboard bound like a sheep.
It's a powerful metaphor for radical, non-negotiable detachment. It's not just about being ready for death, but for any major, abrupt change in fortune, losing a job, a home, a status. And if you are old, Epictetus warns, never wander far from the ship, lest you be missing when you're called for.
You have to prioritize your readiness over your enjoyment of the excursion.
You do. And the necessary mental discipline to maintain that readiness is acceptance, which is laid out in Precept the Eighth.
Wish not that events should happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and your life will flow well.
That is fundamental Stoic submission to fate, or what Epictetus calls God or nature. So if you encounter sickness, Precept 9x clarifies, that is an impediment to the body, but it is not an impediment to your proheresis. Your will is only impeded if it pleases to be impeded.
Lameness is an impediment to the leg, but not to the will. A profound statement coming from the philosopher who was himself lame.
It transforms his suffering into his moral strength. He is living proof that external hardship does not equal internal defeat. And Precept offers the ultimate tool for internal recovery from loss. It's about changing your language entirely.
Never claim loss, claim restoration.
Exactly. If your child dies, the giver fate has restored what was only loaned to you. If your estate is taken, it is restored. Epictetus asks, why should you care who demands it back? You are never the true owner.
You should hold possessions as do travelers at an inn.
The moment you stop seeing externals as permanent possessions and start seeing them as temporary loans, the pain of removal is minimized.
And Precept 12 clarifies the price tag of this newly achieved peace.
Tranquility comes at a cost, but that cost is sacrificing external control. You might worry, if I don't punish my servant, he'll be useless. Epictetus argues that it's better that your servant be bad than that you should be unhappy or disturbed by anger.
It's better to die of hunger, exempt from grief and fear, than to live in affluence with perturbation.
Yes. The price of inner peace is accepting little daily disturbances without losing your rational judgment. If the oil is spilled or the wine is stolen, he says, this is the price paid for peace and tranquility, and nothing is to be had for nothing.
You're paying a small fee, a spilled cup, to secure the greatest good, which is your inner sovereignty.
Right. The person who spilled the cup has not deprived you of anything essential unless you allow the event to rob you of your equanimity.
And Precept 4/10 summarizes this entire foundation of control by defining what true mastery is.
Your master is simply the person who has the power to confer or remove whatever you seek or shun. If you seek nothing and decline nothing that depends on others, then that person cannot be your master. The conclusion is stark and powerful.
If you wish to be free, you must wish for nothing external. Otherwise, you must necessarily remain a slave, regardless of your legal status.
That's it.
That is a staggering conclusion that launches us into the second half of the Enchiridion, the detailed marching orders for applying this freedom in the messy, day-to-day reality of social life.
Yes, this next section is where we shift from theory to technique, from the map to the combat plan. It addresses the friction points that inevitably arise when a disciplined person engages with an undisciplined world. We start with Precept 7/10, which frames life as theater.
So our sole responsibility is to act the given part well, whether we are cast as the poor man, the cripple, the ruler, or the private citizen.
The choice of the role is external. The quality of the performance is internal. This removes the psychological anguish of wishing you had a different destiny. Your moral duty is simply to fulfill the virtue inherent in that role, courage in poverty, patience in sickness. That performance is within your control.
This feeds directly into the ultimate combat instruction in Precept 9es. You can be unconquerable if you only enter into conflicts where you have the power to conquer.
This is a radical strategy of strategic retreat. If you aspire to be truly free, disregard things beyond your power, honors, reputation, external power, because seeking them means subjecting yourself to forces that can defeat you. The true battleground is your judgment.
But this raises a profound moral question that critics often level at Stoicism. If I'm so detached, won't I become selfish or useless to my community? Precept Texas deals with this concern about duty and service.
Epictetus addresses that challenge head-on. People say the philosopher will be nobody anywhere, and their friends will be unassisted. Epictetus asks, what assistance do you mean? Do you mean providing friends with money?
Or making them Roman citizens.
Exactly. He dismisses this. Those externals are not in your power. If you require me to lose my own proper good, my self-respect, my honor, my fidelity, so that you may gain what is no good, like money or status, you are being unreasonable.
He argues that the greatest service you can render to your country is by being a faithful and honorable citizen, a task entirely within your power, rather than providing porticos or baths, which are just external acts.
Right. If you supply your country with one fully reasoned, honorable, and faithful citizen yourself, you are far from useless. You are, in fact, providing the highest form of stability a state can have.
This moral calculus is brought into sharp relief when we look at social competition in Precept XXV. What if someone else is preferred over you for an office or gets a better seat at the banquet?
Epictetus advises you to realize that they simply paid a price you were unwilling to pay. They obtain the external by sacrificing their time, their praise, their attendance, or by bearing the insolence of the powerful. If you are unwilling to pay that price, then don't feel disadvantaged.
It's the lettuce and the obulus analogy, the small coin.
Yes. If someone paid the obulus and got the lettuce, and you didn't pay and went without, you still have the obulus you saved. In the moral realm, the currency is your soul's integrity. The other person gained the superficial item, but you gained the greater advantage of not having to praise whom you dislike and keeping the obulus of your self-respect.
That shifts the entire metric of success from accumulation to preservation. And this focus on the high cost of integrity leads us to one of the most demanding sections. Precept XD9's calculating the commitment, the Olympian analogy.
Before you embark on philosophy, you have to understand the full commitment required, or you will begin enthusiastically and then shamefully give up later. Epictetus compares the philosopher to an aspiring Olympian athlete.
And the regimen he describes sounds incredibly severe.
It is. You must submit to a strict diet. Refrain from all dainties. Exercise at a stated hour in heat and cold. You must give yourself up entirely to your trainer as if to a physician. And even after all this rigorous preparation, there is no guarantee.
In the actual combat, you might receive stripes, be thrown into a ditch, dislocate your arm, swallow dust, and still lose the victory.
You must calculate all this pain, ridicule, and effort first. If your inclination still holds, then set about the combat. Otherwise, you are merely mimicking various roles like a child, a gladiator one day, a philosopher the next, but nothing in earnest. The ultimatum is harsh. You must be one man.
Cultivate either your own reason and be a philosopher, or else externals and be one of the mob.
The serenity and freedom that Epictetus promises is not a free gift. It's the prize of total, painful, unglamorous preparation. It requires you to watch, to labor, to quit old acquaintances, to be despised by your own servant and be laughed at by everyone you meet.
And you must be willing to pay that price for inner serenity. If you waver, you haven't truly committed to the Olympiad of moral life. Following this, Precept XXX clarifies duties and relations. How do we navigate relationships when the other person is, well, fundamentally flawed?
Epictetus states that duties flow naturally from relations. Father, brother, citizen. Is a man your father? Your duty is implied in caring for him, submitting to him, patiently receiving his reproaches. He asks a critical question. If he is a bad father, is your natural tie to a good father? No, your tie is to a father.
The focus is entirely on preserving your virtue, not correcting theirs.
Exactly. You must preserve your own just relation toward them, regardless of their actions. Epictetus insists that another person cannot truly hurt you unless you consent to be hurt by their actions. Their vice is their problem. Your reaction to their vice is your moral combat.
And this framework allows the philosopher to maintain piety without hypocrisy, as detailed in Precept XQ1.
Piety, for Epictetus, involves two things. First, forming right opinions about the gods, that they exist and govern the universe justly and well, and second, willingly obeying and yielding to them amidst all events.
And this is only possible if you are fully convinced that good and evil exist only in things within your power. Why is that necessary for piety?
Because if you suppose external things to be good or evil, then when you are disappointed, when a merchant loses his ship or a farmer suffers a crop failure, you will inevitably reproach and blame the authors of that loss. The gods. Piety requires accepting the divine plan, which means accepting that loss of externals is not a true evil.
This intense focus on internal management is really tested when we encounter revilers, people who speak ill of us. Precept XL2 gives a counterintuitive response.
It does. If someone speaks ill of you, Epictetus says, don't make excuses. Instead, answer them silently with this thought. He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.
That seems almost impossibly passive. How do you defend that? Doesn't it just let others define reality without any accountability?
Well, it's not passive, it's strategically disengaged. The Stoic realizes that the person speaking ill acts from their own internal impression that it is right to do so.
Yeah.
Their opinion is external to you and cannot hurt your prohairesis. You bear with the reviler meekly because you recognize their action as an error of judgment, an internal fault that harms them, not you.
And this is strengthened by Precept XC3. Everything has two handles.
Yes. If you approach something by the handle that cannot be borne, you will drop it. But if you approach it by the handle that can be borne, you will hold it. For example, if your brother acts unjustly, you cannot bear that action by holding the handle of his injustice.
But you can hold the handle of kinship.
You can hold the handle that he is your brother, a fellow human, that you share a common mission, that he's subject to error, then the situation becomes bearable. You choose the handle that allows you to fulfill your duty without sacrificing your peace.
As the handbook moves toward its conclusion, Epictetus returns to the need for action over display in Precept XC6, the sheep analogy.
Never boast or proclaim yourself a philosopher. Demonstrate your principles by your actions. Epictetus warns against ostentation. At an entertainment, don't discourse on how people ought to eat, just eat as you ought.
And the sheep analogy perfectly encapsulates this Stoic process.
Sheep don't hastily throw up the grass to show the shepherds how much they've eaten. They digest it inwardly and produce wool and milk outwardly. Therefore, do not make an exhibition of your principles before the ignorant, but of the actions, the wool and the milk, to which your internal digestion gives rise.
Philosophy as internal metabolization, not public rhetoric. This naturally leads to Precept XC8, detailing the marks of a proficient philosopher. What does the finished product look like?
The proficient censures no one, praises no one, blames no one, and accuses no one. He looks entirely to himself for all help or harm. He accuses only himself when hindered. If he is praised, he smiles to himself at the person who praises him. If censured, he makes no defense. He lives cautiously, restrains desire, and keeps watch over himself as over an enemy and one in ambush.
That image of self-vigilance is so compelling, treating your own mind like a dangerous battlefield. And finally, Precept L, the explicit call to action. Stop delaying.
You're a grown man, a philosophical adult. Stop postponing self-reformation until tomorrow. Let what appears best be an inviolable law today. Every moment of pain, pleasure, glory, or disgrace is the combat, the Olympiad, where honor can be lost or won. And he gives a final instruction. Live as one seeking to be a Socrates.
So after this comprehensive manual designed to create the ideal self-mastered combat officer, what has been the lasting historical echo of Epictetus's practical philosophy?
The immediate impact was immense. His philosophy profoundly influenced the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who cites Epictetus in his Meditations. Aurelius used his techniques for the daily philosophical audit, focusing on the dichotomy of control to manage the stresses of imperial governance.
But the real resurgence, the reason he matters so much to us today, happened during the Renaissance and Enlightenment.
It did. When the Enchiridion was translated into vernacular languages, it became a runaway bestseller, appealing particularly to independent intellectuals and early secular thinkers. Montaigne was an avid reader. Frederick the Great, the King of Prussia, reportedly carried the book with him on all his military campaigns.
A profound realization of that combat officer metaphor.
Absolutely. He was using Stoicism as a tool for mental endurance under extreme duress.
And he also influenced the great French Enlightenment philosophers.
Voltaire, Diderot, Montesquieu, they were all exposed to the Enchiridion during their student years. It offered this compelling, rigorous, ethical framework based entirely on human reason and self-control, independent of divine revelation.
So why did this Roman Stoicism, born under the despotism of emperors like Nero, resonate so strongly with the emerging modern secular mind?
The sources suggest that Roman Stoicism was the philosophy of free intellectuals in a secular civilization. The rise of the absolute state in the early modern era, this new despotism, created a similar psychological climate to the Roman Empire. The independent thinker needed a philosophy for lonely and courageous souls who recognized that the external world was subject to arbitrary power.
So the Stoic emphasis on subjective consciousness and moral problems laid the perfect groundwork for modern rationalism.
Absolutely. The Epictetan distinctions of personality versus the world, of I and mine, and particularly of freedom versus dependence, contain the implicit elements that would be fully developed by rationalists from Descartes, with his focus on the self-aware mind all the way through to Kant, with his emphasis on the autonomy of the moral will.
It's astonishing that the 4 slim books of the Discourses and this small, condensed handbook could have such a disproportionately large role in shaping ethical thought across 2 millennia. It just speaks to the brutal honesty and pure utility of the advice.
It speaks to the universality of the human challenge. Epictetus provides the blueprint for internal integrity in a world where everything external is guaranteed to be fragile, volatile, and outside our ultimate control.
So let's bring this all together for you, the listener. If we distill this deep dive into 3 core takeaways from the Enchiridion, what knowledge should we internalize right now?
Okay, first, the dichotomy. True, unassailable freedom rests entirely on discerning what is within your power, your judgment, your will, your prohairesis, from what is external, your body, property, reputation, and all events. If it's external, treat it as a temporary loan that is not guaranteed to last the night.
Second, acceptance. Resilience comes from wishing events to happen as they do happen. This means regulating your desire and aversion, and viewing every perceived loss as simply fate demanding back something that was only loaned to you temporarily. This mindset is the necessary price of tranquility.
And third, action. Do not proclaim your philosophy, but demonstrate it in action. Stop delaying self-reformation. Live consciously, like the sheep that digest inwardly and produce wool and milk outwardly, adhering strictly to the path of reason and fulfilling your assigned role well, regardless of external ridicule or difficulty.
It is perhaps the ultimate, most empowering lesson that the man born a slave, whose name literally meant acquired property, showed the world that even the most disenfranchised individual holds absolute internal sovereignty. He proved that freedom is not granted by external circumstances, but won by internal self-mastery. If freedom is won internally, how many of the perceived restrictions and boundaries in your life are actually self-imposed?
Something to ponder as you navigate your own battles, the Olympiad of your daily life.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Epictetus and the Enchiridion. We'll see you next time.